Hey everyone, and welcome back to Pro Life Without Borders with Sarah and Michaela. Of course, at this point, you have subscribed, you have liked it, you have joined it, you've shared it with your entire family.
They've been through all the reiterations.
You've done it.
The setup.
Yes, you can recount with joy in your heart all of our changes and improvements. We are still having perhaps some sound quality. So this is our situation, guys. Okay, this is a nonprofit. All right. And so we have two things going on. We have a camera that we have borrowed that we really need to return because they're going to eventually want it back. And
they might not. Like, I'm really banking on them forgetting that they lent it to us.
Like, one day my friend Amy is going to be like, oh, I lost this really expensive camera and I don't know where it went. And I'll be like,
that's weird.
That's so bizarre, Amy. Let me come over and help you look for it. Digging through her cabinets. I don't know. You must have lost it. Maybe it was the kids. So we probably need, in order to be good Christians and not break any commandments, we should probably buy our own camera and let these poor people have their camera back.
Yeah, I guess.
And we do need a new microphone, but here's the thing. They're expensive. So if you're thinking, I love your podcast and I would like to invest in equipment so that I can hear you, please go to promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate. And we could use $150 for the camera and $150 for the microphone. And then if we can get a better deal, we will use it to save babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like $500 would be plenty of wiggle room.
Yes. If you're thinking, I have $500 and I don't know what to do with it, and I would like to donate it to two women who can't use basic technology.
We are rolling into like the second half of the year. Well, we're already in the second half of the year, but we're rolling into, I have absorbent amounts of money and I need to get rid of it for tax purposes season. My favorite season.
Maybe we don't have this season in our, maybe you need to donate because you have too much money.
If you celebrate tax deductible day.
You need the tax deduction. So you can donate to Promise of Life Network. If you put podcast in the note, we will use it to buy podcast equipment. Other than that, we'll just use it for like the ministry.
The general saving of babies.
Yes. But if you would like to make a donation so that we can get better equipment, we would accept that. That would be awesome. It would be great. So Michaela was telling me about Ray Comfort.
Yeah.
And like, Kirk Cameron. I've had to Google Ray Comfort.
Well, yeah, I feel like he's not as well known as Kirk Cameron. But they have a ministry called Living Waters, I think. Something like that. Which is actually a really great way, like, for evangelism. And so they kind of teach you how to evangelize people, which is very helpful.
Right.
But one of the things that they talk about is like how do you convince someone for their need of the gospel?
Okay.
And so they go up to people and they'll have conversations. It's not just like this awkward, like, so have you ever sinned? Like it's like a very, but they'll ask questions like, well, have you ever told a lie? Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, I have. And they're like, well, what does that make you? And they're like, a liar. Mm-hmm. Or like, have you ever stolen something? Yes. What does that make you? And without fail, they always say a stealer.
A stealer. And we don't want to be stealers.
We don't want to be stealers.
And we don't mean the football team. We do not want a Steeler.
We really don't want to be them.
I don't want to play football.
Well, they're not a very good football team. My understanding, is
they won the Super Bowl like 6 times or something.
No, I think you might be thinking of the Pens who won the Stanley Cup.
No. The Steelers because it was all like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't know, but lately here I hear that it's just not. It's not going well.
I thought the Steelers were really good. See, I grew up with the Eagles, and frankly, everyone looks good. From that vantage point.
That's fair.
I grew up near Philadelphia, and that's just the way life was.
I really don't know much about football.
I don't either, as evidence by this conversation.
I know who the Steelers are. I've never been to a game. I know very few football teams.
I have been to one football game. My grandma took me to a football game between West Virginia University and Rutgers, New Jersey. Because we lived near New Jersey, so she drove us to it. Mm-hmm. And you should have heard my grandma trying to explain football to my sisters and I. Like, it was sad. And then my grandpa bought us ponchos in case it rained because, like, he was a very prepared person. And they were bright red. So we were there to cheer for West Virginia because that was my grandma's alma mater. And Rutgers was bright red.
Oh, that's...
And so my grandpa bought us bright red. So my grandma, the inside of the ponchos was yellow, and West Virginia's colors are gold and blue. And so we turned them all inside out. And my grandpa was mortified.
Did your grandma light couches on fire? I hear that's what they do at WVU.
I honestly could not say she did. She was.
I didn't really know your grandmother, but I feel like this tracks. Like,
you know me.
I do know you, and I do know the way that you think about your grandmother, which tells me she probably lit a couch on fire back in her heyday.
I would be more surprised to find out that she didn't.
Yeah.
Than to find out that she did.
Yeah. I think they've been doing that now for...
I have a feeling they probably had a ban back then.
Probably. I don't know that it was ever really legal, but...
I can't imagine the school was ever like, you know what? Sure.
Our alma mater never did anything cool like that. Like, we weren't allowed to burn couches.
We weren't allowed to dance.
we
had
love
to go
you, Geneva.
We love campus.
You, Geneva.
We do love Geneva.
But it's true, we weren't allowed to dance.
Love Geneva, but we had to go off campus and dance in the basement of a church like it was a speakeasy.
It's true. You ever experience something and at the time it seems totally normal,
right? And
you're like, this is just life, and then a decade later you're telling someone about how you went to a swing dance, secret dance in the basement of a church,
off campus.
And they're like, okay.
Okay, so this is my favorite one. I have many favorite. I love Geneva. It was a great education, a lot of great relationships. I'm going to tell this story and then we're going to get into the topic of the day. But I had knitted a baby blanket for a baby at church.
Huh.
And I needed to wash it before I gave it to him because obviously I'd been dragging it around campus for whoever knows how long. And so it was Saturday night, but midnight was the coven. It was the coven.
Right.
So I went, and you can't do laundry on Sundays.
You couldn't. You can now. Yeah. What? They changed that, I think, the year before I got there. They opened up the laundry facilities.
Lock the door.
Yes.
And if your laundry was inside, it was sitting there until Monday.
Yes.
And they did it from midnight to midnight. So it wasn't, we didn't even do the sundown, sunset, whatever. So I had this, and I was I went to my RD, and I'm I have this baby blanket, and I really want to give it to the mom on tomorrow at church. Can I wash it? And she was like, no, it is forbidden. And I could not wash my baby blanket.
That's tough. Yeah, no, you're allowed to do laundry on Sundays now. It was a whole thing. It's really gone to the dogs.
Next thing you know, they'll be swing dancing on campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holding hands all hours a day. Alrighty.
We love you, Geneva.
We do love
and
Geneva.
We appreciate all the support.
Geneva sponsor us.
All the Geneva people and especially the board members who are from Geneva. We really love them.
Wait, we don't have any right now.
I thought we have one.
Nope.
For real?
Well, Michael teaches there, but she didn't graduate. Oh, do you just mean teach? She teaches there.
Yeah, people who received their living allowances from the school.
Yes,
we have at least two.
All right.
I was no, we have
two.
Because there was a hot second where I was we can't get any more Geneva people because then it's Geneva runs this place.
Yeah, no, we have two board members who teach at Geneva.
Yes, and we love them dearly.
But, let's be real, one of them is never listening to this podcast.
It's true. We've been yapping for 8 minutes. We're here to talk about euthanasia today.
Yes, we are here to talk about euthanasia. And so this is actually going to be a two-parter because there's way too much to cover in one episode. So today we're going to talk about a specific book written by Derek Humphrey, who was a euthanasia, the father kind of euthanasia. And we'll talk a little bit about sort of the general ethics and the general problems with it. So Michaela and I are coming from a Christian perspective. Yes. And we're going to share some Bible verses, and we're going to talk about what the Lord has to say about what the word has to say about murder, about killing, about us being temples, whatever. If you are not a Christian and you're listening to this and you think, oh, well, that must mean it's okay if I'm not a Christian, or you're in that bucket of well, we can't tell non-believers what to do, we are also going to talk about just some general problems with euthanasia. So even if you are in the camp of, I think euthanasia is a great idea if it's done well, we're going to explain to you why that's really not possible. There is no way to do euthanasia well. Yeah. So even if you think, I agree with euthanasia in theory, we're gonna break down why it can't be done well. It just can't. So one of the books we're going to be using is actually my book. It's called Courageously Pro-Life. Sarah M. Bowen, so that's me. You can actually order this on our website. You can go to courageouslyprolife.com and it will redirect you to our shop so you can purchase it. It's not expensive and you will not get a refund if you don't like it because ain't nobody got time for that. But if you don't like it, you can just not like it and use it as paperweight or
pass
something.
it along to someone else.
Or pass it along. You can sell it at the yard sale. If you buy this book for $20, I think it's $24 on my website, 100% of those proceeds come to the center. None of it goes to me, other than the fact that like I make money here, I guess. I don't know. But no, it doesn't go to me. And if you hang on to it and you keep it in really good shape, you could sell it at a yard sale for 50 cents.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Collector's edition.
Yeah, don't you can take that to the bank. Yes. Okay. So chapter 6 is on euthanasia, and this topic is very close to my heart because I was part of my grandmother and my father's end of days. So as they were passing, as they were dying, I was part of that experience. I was part of making decisions. I was part of helping family to walk through that. And the cover photo on week 6 is actually my grandma and I holding hands in her last week of life, which was a really precious time. And she never would have considered euthanasia. My family would never have considered that. However, it really brought home to me how, like, I had that opportunity to pour into her in those last weeks of life that I would have missed out if we had just said, oh, well, we don't want to deal with this. Or she had said, I don't want to deal with it. And it was beautiful. Like, it was hard and it was difficult. And it was emotional, but it was also just this really awesome time for me to give back to someone who had given so much to me.
Right.
And to be there for her in a really tangible way, which was pretty awesome.
And I'm just super against killing people. You have like this beautiful story of like, here's why, like, this is something important to me. And I'm just like, I just think killing people is wrong.
Bad.
No, but like, no. I am on the board of directors for a nursing home. Mm-hmm. And because I love old people. And I want to see old people thrive and thrive with dignity and be taken care of with dignity. And I think a lot of that comes from, I was raised in a culture that treats the elderly very differently than we think about them here in the States. And so even though I am an American, like it's actually not a question. Like, I do have an American passport that I can never keep track of, but I do have.
It's in the box.
And anyway, I am an American, but I was raised in a collectivist culture that treats their elderly very different. And I do think that I took a lot of that with me when I came back and moved back to the States.
Which is good. We should be doing that here.
Yeah, I think just like treating people nicely is a good thing to do.
Straight up.
And I really didn't think that these were controversial opinions, but it turns out...
Apparently this is now podcast fodder.
It turns out that it's actually incredibly controversial to think that, like, yeah, killing people is wrong.
Yeah, your mom used to just tell you this in the kitchen, but now we have to get on a platform and talk about it.
Well, and I also think that people, and we've talked about this before, and we'll talk about it again, like, pro-life does not just end at, okay, a woman has decided not to kill her baby. Like, that's not what being pro-life is about. Right. That's an aspect of it, but it's actually a very tiny aspect of what it means to be pro-life.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a lot more to it. And so we're going to talk about euthanasia. All right, so a couple verses. We're going to do our Jesus moment early because I think it gives us a really good foundation for this topic. The first one is Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living creature. Now, this was a one-time event. That's not first breath is not when life begins. We've had people try to use that verse and say, oh, look, this means that when you first breathe, life begins. No, that's not true. This was once. Well, and then, of course, Eve was formed as well. But this shows us that God gives life. And so life is a gift from God. And so we cannot just say, I don't want it anymore. Yeah. That's not okay because it's from God. And it's something that if we're going to take a life, it's a very, like, and I'm talking about like wars and those kinds of things. It should be a very heavy, very something that we walk into very, very carefully. And it certainly shouldn't be something that we do for convenience or to avoid suffering or whatever. And those are the things we're going to talk about as we talk about euthanasia. Exodus 20:13. So this is probably the most clear-cut biblical argument.
If you thought the Genesis verse was like very gray area, here's the black and white of it.
You shall not murder. And maybe you're King James only, and so thou shalt not murder. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that we should not be murdering ourselves either. Like, I don't think that God was unclear on this. And then a little bit more in depth. So 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and I'm just going to read verse 17, but really it's 9 through 17. But verse 17 says, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, for God's temple is holy, and you are that temple." And this is for Christians, right? But we are temples that can have God inside of us, right? So even if you're not a Christian or someone isn't a Christian, they still have that capacity.
Well, and also we're all made in his image.
Yes.
And we don't want to commit crimes against image bearers.
Mm-hmm.
And the elderly are image bearers. Christian elderly are image bearers. Non-Christian elderly are image bearers. Unborn babies are image bearers.
Right. And it can seem very attractive to think, well, I don't want people to suffer. What if they want to pass away? What if they don't want to go? What if they have a terminal illness? But that doesn't make it okay to destroy an image bearer of God. And there are and we'll talk about this more in the next episode, there are ways that you cannot prolong death. It doesn't mean you have to do every intervention, that you have to do every treatment, that you have to do every crazy medical experiment to try and prolong someone's dying. But it does mean that we cannot hasten that death either. And there is a line there, and we'll talk about it. And it's really not as great as everybody thinks it is.
Right.
Now, that being said, and this happens every time I teach this as part of the Bible study, or other people read it on their own, a lot of people, I shouldn't say that, that's probably an overstatement, but there are people who have come to me and said, wow, I did your chapter on euthanasia and I realized I did not make a good choice. Like, my mom was dying, my grandma was dying, my husband was dying, and I did what the doctors told me to do, and now I'm looking back and I'm thinking I should not have done that. That's a tough thing to walk through. And it's okay to be very honest with yourself and say, I made a poor choice and I need to seek forgiveness for that choice and allow God to forgive you.
Yeah.
It's not to say it's okay. It's not to say it's no big deal. But the Bible tells us that God is faithful and just to forgive us our sins. And he's not going to deny you forgiveness because of this. He wants you to ask for forgiveness, and he wants to give you that forgiveness.
There's something to be said for doing the best you can with what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, they're just ignorant. And I say that in like the truest sense of the word. They simply don't know.
Right.
And that doesn't make it better. It doesn't excuse any of it. But like, there's grace.
Yes. There's
thankfully
grace.
There's so much grace.
We need it every day.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about 2 books today. One of them is called Final Exit, which was originally, I believe, published in 1991, and there have been some revisions and updates since then. And it's a book by Derek Humphrey, who's the founder of what was originally called the Hemlock Society, and is now called Compassion and Choices. And he's sort of seen as...
What whiplash. Whoa.
Yes. So
we went from hemlock to compassion.
Can you see the marketing gurus got a hold of that one? So the Hemlock Society, right? Hemlock is a poisonous plant.
Yeah.
You can take it and kill yourself. And Derek Humphrey was pretty straight up about it. He's like, Hemlock Society, sounds great. Let's put that on the letterhead. And then a marketing person came along and was like, Derek,
we have to make this more palatable.
We need to make this a little bit better. And so they renamed it Compassion and Choices. And you will never hear me just say Compassion and Choices. I will always say formerly the Hemlock Society, because I don't think that we should be forgetting that. No. To the point where my editor was like, do you realize you're being a little bit...
Euthanasia should not be palatable.
No, it shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't be like, oh, how pretty, how wonderful, how beautiful.
No, it's not. It
is one of those things. No. And it's not always a choice.
No. We'll just call it spade. Hemlock Society.
Hemlock Society. All right. So I'm going to read, and then, the other book is the one Michaela is holding, and it's called Forced Exit, and it is Wesley Smith's response to Final Exit. And he actually has a really neat chapter in the back that talks about like a kind of like a quick Cliff Notes version. It's a hard book to get through on a couple levels. First of all, Wesley Smith is a genius. And so some of the writing is just really like, he's just smart. And so it takes a minute to kind of unravel a little bit what he's saying or get through the sentence structure. but also just because it's a very tough topic.
Yeah, there's very few books that I have to sit down and walk away from. And this was one of them, just because, and one, it is actually kind of difficult to read. And I am of average intelligence, but
I would say you are above average.
Like, you could do it. Like, it's not impossible, but it is like, oh, it takes a little bit of thought. Like, this is not a mindless, I've got half an hour before bed, let me just pop this.
Right. Yeah, if you're watching the kids at the pool, this is not it.
No. But it's just heavy. And he goes through and he talks about movies that, like, have positive representations of euthanasia. He talks about other books, and then he's talking about the final exit and, like, the arguments that are made. And so it's just really disturbing.
Yes.
Even though it's from a pro-life, you know, like, pro-not euthanasia. Anti-euthanasia perspective, it's still a really heavy book.
Yes, but very good.
Very good.
I do not like giving money to Derek Humphrey and Compassion and Choices / the Hemlock Society. So I actually borrowed Final Exit from the library, and I probably will not purchase it unless I find it used. But you, of course, are welcome to look that up as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're actually going to look at a quote, which is in the Bible study, Courageously Pro-Life, from the book, The Final Exit. And the book is very disturbing. So it reads like the Screwtape Letters, but like even creepier. Because when you're reading the Screwtape Letters, you know it's written by a Christian who's trying to help you understand.
It's like C.S. Lewis pretending to be a demon.
Right, yes. So,
which is like a very specific vibe.
Yes, very odd, very specific. And it can feel very like, it almost feels like I refer to as like you dipped your brain in oil. Like it just feels like you have let something into your brain that you don't really want in there. Final Exit is like reading it, except the demon is real.
So versus like C.S. Lewis pretending to be a demon, a literal demon.
A literal demon. And I'm not saying that Derek Humphrey was a demon, but I will say he was certainly influenced by satanic forces. We'll call it that. And I'm not trying to be over the top about that. Like, this was a very difficult book to read. It literally tells you how to kill yourself. And this is one of the things that I felt was hard to stomach, and we're going to talk about it and we're going to break it apart. So this is a quote from the book. I, Derek Humphrey, this is about his entry into the world of euthanasia. So he's recounting something that has happened an unknown amount of time ago. I called Dr. Joe, which is in quotes, so it's not his real name, and asked if we could meet. He invited me to his counseling rooms, for he had by now become an eminent physician with a lucrative practice. As prestigious and powerful as he was, he still had not lost the compassion and humanity that I noted in earlier years. I told him how seriously ill Jean was and of her desire to die soon. This is his wife. Yeah. So his wife, according to him, has a terminal illness, and he is going to this doctor to procure something to allow her to die, to kill her. He questioned me closely about the state of the disease, its effects on her, and what treatments she had undergone. As soon as he heard that some of her bones were breaking at the slightest sudden movement, he stopped the conversation. There's no quality of life left for her, he said. He got up from his desk and strode to his medicine cabinet. Dr. Joe did some mixing of pills and handed a vial to me. He explained that the capsules should be emptied into a sweet drink to reduce the bitter taste. A few weeks later, when Jane knew the time had come, she asked me for the drugs. 50 minutes later, she stopped breathing. Okay, so let's pull this apart.
What? There's a couple of things.
There's a couple of things. So first of all, is this really what happened?
Yeah, we're taking his word for it. And it sounds like Derek Humphrey might not be the kind of person who I would trust personally.
No, not at all.
But he's the only person who can now recount this because Jean, his wife, is no longer with us.
Okay, so this is interesting. I was gonna tell this to the end, but since you said that. After Jean's death, Humphrey chose to remarry. His second wife also died after ingesting a lethal dose of pills. In her suicide note addressed to an anti-euthanasia friend, she confessed that Humphrey told her that Jean did not die from the pills. Her note claims that Humphrey held Jean down and suffocated her. I thought you read this.
Well, I blacked out a lot of this curriculum because I helped edit the footnotes, and it was traumatizing.
It's a little traumatizing.
So I've really blacked out most of the curriculum. I'm not gonna lie.
So we have two accounts. Okay.
Okay.
So we have
hold.
Derek Humphrey saying one thing, and then we have this note supposedly sent to an anti-euthanasia friend saying something different. We don't know what happened.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Humphrey could be telling the truth. I feel like that's unlikely, but maybe he is.
And I suppose no one's talked to Dr. Joe.
We don't know who Dr. Joe is.
Sounds. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So yeah. So okay. So just we are. So there's no guarantee that this is actually what happened. Okay. But first of all, so Humphrey is claiming that he goes to a doctor who is not his wife's doctors. So he says in his book he wanted to work with a doctor that wasn't his wife's doctor, so that he could avoid legal consequences for the doctors.
So right off, we love a self-aware man.
Yes.
Right off the bat, he recognizes that this is illegal.
Right. Very, very illegal.
Yeah.
And he's going to someone who does not know his wife, at least doesn't know her from a medical perspective.
Do we know what exactly she had?
I think it was cancer.
Okay.
But I don't remember.
Yeah.
And it's been a while, and I didn't write that down.
Yeah.
At least I don't think I did.
Okay.
No, he just says that she's ill.
Okay.
So he goes to a doctor that he remembers from being a reporter who has not examined his wife. As far as we know, has not met his wife, but at least has not met her in like a medical capacity.
Right. Not familiar with her case at all.
Right. Does not indicate that the doctor has asked for any medical records.
Yeah.
Or anything, is literally taking his testimony that his wife is terminally ill and that she wants to die.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even bring his wife to the doctor, and he doesn't introduce the doctor to his wife. So for all this doctor knows, his wife is totally fine.
Yeah.
And Humphrey's making it up. So then he goes on and says, this doctor says, or according to Humphrey, as soon as he heard that some of her bones are breaking at the slightest sudden movement, he stopped the conversation. There's no quality of life left for her, he said. He got up from his desk and strode to his medicine cabinet. Okay, so he's making a judgment call on this woman's quality of life without ever having met her, without any understanding of what she's going through. And he's basically just saying, oh, we don't have to talk anymore. I have decided, the doctor, have decided there's no quality of life left.
Yeah, that doesn't sound sketchy at all.
And then he goes to his medicine cabinet.
And mixes, what does he say? And makes a mixture or mixes some pills or...
Dr. Joe did some mixing of pills and handed a vial to me. What pills?
Yeah, I was about to say, so I know that this happened...
Probably in the 80s.
Probably in the 80s. The book was published in the 90s.
Yeah.
My doctor doesn't have any medicine just like randomly. Like it's been a little bit since I've actually physically been to the doctor's office because like now I can just phone call in.
Right.
But like they mostly just have like rubber gloves and giant Q-tips.
Yes. Like the tongue depressors.
I would be hard pressed to find anything. In fact, most of the time I can't get any medicine at the doctor at all. I have to go to the pharmacist.
Right.
And I know that this was the 80s. And that the 80s were a wild time.
Right.
But this seems sketchy even for the 80s.
Well, and the fact that this guy is mixing up pills and just hands him a vial? What pills?
Yeah, like that doesn't...
What are you giving
so,
it?
like, we're using some off-label...
Poison?
It's just a vial that says poison.
Like from the Emperor's New
Yeah, I was about to say it like the poison.
Yeah.
Cusco. The poison for Cusco. The Cusco's poison.
Cusco's poison. Like,
this is not funny. This is a coping mechanism.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And if us joking is offensive to you, I apologize. This is how we've learned to deal with heavy subjects. This is horrifying.
No, it's
right. We're
awful.
Literally talking about a woman's death. And I have read this quote time and time again, and every time I'm horrified and every time I'm upset. So this is just how we're dealing with it. And I'm sorry. It's just how we're getting through this episode because it's tough. This is very tough.
Yeah.
So
okay, so he does some mixing of pills. Very vague description.
Hands him the vial. This next piece is also very problematic. He explained that the capsules should be emptied into a sweet drink to reduce the bitter taste. So he is telling Derek Humphrey, how to hide the taste of a lethal dose of what is essentially poison.
This is roofie behavior.
Yes.
Like this is literally a roofie.
So so if you are being cared for by someone, your spouse, your parent, your child, your nurse, they're going to bring you food and water and beverages, and you're not going to suspect.
It's a really uncomfortable time to be taking a sip of water.
I didn't poison it.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So why is he telling Humphrey how to hide the taste?
Right. Like, I mean, I understand wanting maybe to just make an overall unpleasant experience better. But that's really
sketchy.
Yeah, that feels different than making cough syrup bubblegum flavor.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's...
So he's saying, this is a woman that you are caring for. By your report, here's how to hide the taste of this thing that will kill her.
Yeah. That's a roofie. This guy is roofing his wife.
Yeah. A few weeks later, when Jean knew the time had come, she asked me for the drugs. 50 minutes later, she stopped breathing. Okay, again, this is his account.
Yeah.
And his second wife, now again, very unsubstantiated. There's not a lot of coverage. There is a reasonably credible claim that she says that Humphrey actually that the pills did not work and that Humphrey suffocated her.
Yeah, there is an interesting gap of information.
Yes.
It is, she asked for the drugs, and then 50 minutes later, she wasn't breathing.
Right.
So, in those 50 minutes, I want to know what happened.
And the thing is, honestly, I want to know too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Because even if it happened exactly the way Humphrey said it happened, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, even if we could change some points of the story and the doctor did meet Jean and Jean was dying and Jean did ask for the pills, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
The whole thing is wrong.
Right.
100%. There is no good way to do this. But if you are an individual who believes, and a lot of people do, that if someone is terminally ill or someone is in pain or someone is whatever, they should have the right to access these types of pills, I would challenge you to consider a couple things. First of all, what's the motivation? What's the motivation? It's money, right? Okay, people are not offering assisted suicide as an option because they love people and don't want them to suffer. They're offering it because they want to save money.
Yes,
and
we know this.
We know this because we have another quote from a book written again by Derek Humphrey. This time it was co-authored by Mary Clement, and the book is called "Freedom to Die: Politics and the Right to Die Movement." A rational argument can be made for allowing PAS, which is physician-assisted suicide, in order to offset the amount society and families spend on the ill, as long as it is the voluntary wish of the mentally competent, terminally ill, and incurable adult. There will likely come a time when PAS becomes a commonplace occurrence for individuals who want to die and feel it is the right thing to do by their loved ones. There is no contradicting the fact that since the largest medical expenses are incurred in the final days and weeks of life, the hastened demise of people with only a short time left would free resources for others. Hundreds of billions of dollars could benefit those patients who not only can be cured, but want to live. So imagine for a moment that you are talking to your mother, your father, your grandparent, your aunt, your uncle, and you tell them, hey, grandma,
you're costing me money.
It could save us a lot of money if you just
got on with it.
Yeah. And how is grandma going to feel?
She's not going to feel particularly loved or like she would like to live life.
No. And in fact, a lot of elderly, and this was my experience with my grandparents, did not want to be a bother.
Right.
They don't want to be a burden. They don't want to be a bother. They don't want to be a trouble. And if they come to you and they say, hey, I could take these pills and then you won't have to deal with me for the, next 6 months of this cancer or this thing that I'm dealing with. And the kids are like, well, I mean, that's your choice. They're going to think that you think, yeah, that's what we want. Or if your doctor comes to you and says, oh, I could write you this prescription for chemotherapy and infusions and radiation, or I could just write you this other prescription and you could just take them and
stop costing us money.
Stop costing all this money and stop causing all this bother. And the other thing is this is not reserved for people who are facing an inevitable death.
No.
We are seeing it used in cases of depression.
Right, because depressed people are definitely in the right frame of mind to be making life or death decisions.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, if you're already depressed, someone comes to you and offers you a medical way out, that's not fair. That's not right.
No, and 5 years ago, well, definitely 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, if someone came to us and said, or went to anyone and said, I'm thinking about ending my own life. You have to be careful about terminology because I'm afraid YouTube is going to be so
might
upset.
Just yank this down. Yeah.
But if someone came to us and said, I would like to end my own life, we would, and I still think it's the best option for that person would have been to visit a psychiatric facility.
Yes.
Because they are obviously unwell. And that would have been the thought a decade ago. Mm-hmm. Like, you're having these thoughts, this is a problem, we need to get you help. Today, someone could come and say, I'm thinking about ending my own life. And we rate the prescription.
Right. And there are states in the United States where this could happen. There's countries in Europe, I think Canada.
Yeah, I was like, this isn't just like a foreign concept. Like, there are states in the United States that allow for this.
So at the time of this writing, which was a few years ago, it says, so far, Oregon has not documented any cases where patients were prescribed lethal pills because they were in unbearable pain. In fact, depression seems to be the strongest indicator that a person will request PAS. Even knowing this, only about 3% of people asking for help to commit suicide were offered psychological services. 3%.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. So one of the things we do here at Promise of Life Network is when a client comes to us, we screen them for suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
We ask them if they've had thoughts. We ask them if it's a concern. And if they say yes, we make a referral and we follow up with them and we offer them help. We offer them hotlines. We offer them mental health. We offer counseling. We don't offer it, but we offer them referrals for those things.
Right.
Because that's professionally what you're supposed to do.
Well, that's what they need.
That's what they need. And so Oregon offers that to 3% of people seeking PAS, seeking a physician to help them end their own life. That's obscene. And the thing is, we have to stop with the false dichotomy. Okay, we have to stop saying, well, either people are going to be in incurable, terminal, horrible pain, or they can die now. No. There's
a lot of in between.
There's a lot of in between. End of life care can be challenging, but it can also be beautiful, like I shared earlier. And as the church, we need to be willing to walk through that with people and step up and be there for people that don't have anyone else and help them make good choices. So we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about what we call involuntary euthanasia. So what we talked about today was essentially voluntary, or as voluntary as it can get. I would argue that it's never truly voluntary.
Yeah.
Because I think if people are given the right supports, they want to live.
Right.
But we'll talk about involuntary euthanasia, and we'll talk about how do we walk people through those end of life issues and how do we do that in a Christ-honoring way. So I know this was a heavier episode. Please stick with us. It's important. Every single one of us is going to have a family member pass away.
Well, and I think that's a big thing too, is that we're not all going to experience unplanned pregnancies. Some of us might. We're not all going to have abortions, but we all are going to face the death of loved ones.
And our own death.
Yeah. So this is the human experience. Mm-hmm. And it's part of being pro-life. This is not, we're pro-life and also there's this euthanasia thing. This affects all of us.
Right.
And it can feel really overwhelming. We have established I'm of average intelligence, and I work technically in a healthcare setting, right at the pregnancy center. We're a licensed medical facility. Mm-hmm. I have family members who work for nursing homes and assisted living and who have done this for decades. And it was still overwhelming when my grandfather passed away last year. Mm-hmm. And just making those decisions. And it was not a very sudden thing, right? It had been going on. And so we were kind of this is the end. And we were aware of that. And making those decisions, even as educated people who work in this field regularly, was overwhelming.
Yep.
And so I can only imagine what it must feel like for people who aren't familiar with terms or who aren't on the board of directors for a nursing home in their spare time.
So next week, we're going to hopefully give you some terms, some lines, some ethical considerations. And if there's interest, we could do another follow-up. We'll definitely talk about it again. It's a big topic that needs to be addressed. For now, we will see you next week. Please like and share. And and subscribe to our podcast. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day.